All right, we're going to call to order the City of Lake Mills City Council meeting for the 5th of January, 2021. Can we get a roll call, please?
Diane? Here. Mr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Fritsch?
Here.
And Ms. Schmidt previously informed staff that she'd be unavailable for this evening's meeting.
All right. That moves us into Pledge of Allegiance. For those of you that can rise, please rise with me. We'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Had my headphones off and I could still hear you clean as a whistle there, Doug. Yeah. All right, item 4, correction and or approval of the City Council minutes of December 15th, 2020. Do we have a motion of adoption as written?
Doug, so moved.
Second.
All right, so moved by Mr. Fritsch and seconded by Diane. Let's call the roll call vote, please.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Diane?
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
Moves us into correspondence. Diane, you want to start?
The only correspondence I had was some discussion about the Santa Claus, but nothing that to report yet at this point.
All right, thanks. Doug, do you have anything?
Nope, nothing to report.
All right, the only thing I had was some correspondence concerning some action that we as a council had asked the I can't think of it, Parks Board to look at in reference to the boat lifts. So I had some correspondence on that, and there'll be some future action items that we may need to look at coming up in the hopefully very near future. But that's all I had. All right, item 6, questions and public comment. The public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. We don't have any public hearings tonight. Public comments will also be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meeting laws discourages actions by the council on items not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes and state your name and address when starting your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet provided. For those that are attending online, please type your name and address in the chat feature if you wish to speak. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak? Yep, we have one.
Good evening. I'll keep this very, very brief. Doug Millay, 731 South Ferry Drive. You've seen me for the last few meetings, partner in Formul Development, LLC. I just want to thank the city, and I would like to thank Dan and Steve and the whole team that got together. We've gone back and forth many times on this development agreement that's on your agenda this evening. I think we've hammered out a pretty good agreement for all parties. So again, I just wanted to get up here to thank everybody for pushing this forward. And we're quite excited about kicking off this project. And it's an aggressive agreement for us, and we actually like it that way. So we look forward to moving as quickly as we can and working with the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Millay. Anybody else? Do you wish to speak, ma'am? No? Okay. Is there anybody online here? It doesn't look like it at this time. Looks like we only have two folks on here. Okay. All right, so we will end questions and public comment. and move on to the city manager's report. Steve? I think you're muted again, Steve.
Yeah. The monthly budgets were included from November, which are the most recent ones, and then the PD report for November also. I did want to note that the fire department held their service level upgrade hearing and are finalizing their documents for submission to state for that. Obviously, we've had a lot of snow operations going on in the last week and a half. So you'll note that I sent you all a copy of the street information, and the FAQs are up. We're getting ready to start the summer projects. Actually, we're probably 65% done with the design of all the summer projects. And they'll be on your agendas probably coming up next meeting, maybe the meeting after, which would be Reed Street, Jefferson Street, and West Lake Street. Sandy Beach boat launch bid is out and will be coming in the end of January. Other than that, I don't have anything. Is there any other questions?
The only thing I had, Steve, is I just want to make sure I was reading your November budget worksheet correct. So if I look at just the very first line under revenue, general property taxes, so that means in November nothing happened basically. Our year-to-date is 4,422,000. That's how much we spent, or how
No.
much we've
Collected.
collected. Excuse me. Yeah, I get the right. So we're actually down like 2,200.
The other way around. We're up 2,200. We actually
Okay.
collected a little bit more than we budgeted.
Yeah, nope, that makes sense. I got it.
Yeah, you got to remember that
Sorry,
the
I'm
revenues
looking
are
at
backwards.
revenue. I'm looking at revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was messing me up, and I was like, what in the heck am I looking at here? Okay, nope, that makes sense. That's perfect. I just wanted to make sure I was reading it correct, and that figured if I didn't ask the question, somebody else had the same question and didn't ask it, we'd never know the answer. So,
The bottom line where the totals are is probably the best one to look at.
yeah,
Because that gives you, we took in about $400,000 in November, a little
Yep.
over, and we were at 7,543,000, a little over that, and we had 7,934,000 budgeted.
Yep.
But we have another month to go, so we should be right on we should actually exceed the budget numbers. Obviously, there were some weird numbers.
yeah, that the percentages threw me off when I saw that.
Yeah, don't look at the percentages. I don't think she does those right.
Yeah, I was gonna say 598% and 2,000%. It just, that's where I really got confused. I was going through there and I said, okay, it's all making sense. And then I got down to those percentages and it didn't make sense to me then. Okay,
When you look at the building permits,
which page is that one?
it's right on the front under revenues, and it's about
Oh,
right in
got
the
it.
middle.
Yep.
And we had budgeted for $45,000 worth of building permits. We actually took in $125,000. So
No.
there were
yeah,
$245,000 more of revenue in that category than not. Another one that we thought was a little off was, or that was unusual, was Sandy Beach fees.
Yeah,
You'll notice that we collected almost $25,000 more than we had anticipated. And that was because early in the spring, when there was nothing else to do but go to the beach, everybody went to the beach. And we collected a ton of fees this year.
Yeah.
So there were some abnormalities that I wouldn't have included in a normal budget year. The building permit fees, that's something we may have to look at in the future and see how it goes. But in general, it was pretty consistent. We didn't really have anything that that I anticipated would be unusual. You know, like local fire protection service fees, some of those towns don't pay until December 31st. If they don't have to give up their money, they don't. So, you know, Betsy will probably get it in the next couple days if she doesn't already have it.
Yeah, there's only a couple others that I looked at that caught me as funny as the finance payroll. Was a little bit out of whack there, and then it was the something for the judicial. I think it was their insurance.
Yes, well, you should have remembered Betsy's memo from the last meeting where we went over moving the money, transferring the money into the accounts, because remember in February, we decided to hire that court clerk finance. And so that impacted those. So in December, we actually ended up transferring the money to cover those issues. So those will, while this is a November one, those should be corrected by the December one.
Okay. Yeah, those were the only questions I had. I just want to make sure I was reading it right, and I said those percentages really threw me for a loop, so I just wanted to make sure I understood what was going on there.
Yeah, the one percentage that I never look at is that one. In fact, I always go in, I get the spreadsheet, I always go in and redo is the totals.
Yeah.
Because for some reason her totals get kind of screwed up at the bottom on the percentages. Now, the December meeting, when that, or for the month of December, that finance one, if we put it out in January, that won't be the final one, because remember, actually we do the audit and then the audit makes all the adjustments at the December one. So the final December one probably won't be out until mid-March.
Okay. Okay. Diane, Doug, did you have any questions?
Yeah, so in other words, for building permits, that meant we had quite a bit of building going on.
Yeah, yes, a lot of building.
Wow.
Well, wasn't that because a lot of people did work because they were home with the COVID stuff?
Yeah.
That's what I think happened.
Yes, that has a lot to do with it. We probably have somewhere around $13 million worth of new assessed value in single family homes. We probably have another, in apartments, we probably have another $600,000-700,000 worth of new assessed value, maybe more than that. It depends on what timeline it was, because I know several of those buildings were done in the year before, several buildings were done this year, so it just depends on what year they fall into and what state of completion they were in. But there was we'll probably see, this year we took in total new assessed value, we had one of the highest net new constructions in the area, and we'll probably continue that next year.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. That moves us on to item 8. Acceptance of minutes from the Joint Review Board of April 14th, 2020, and the Joint Review Board of June 29th, 2020. It will go on record as written. Item 9, council business. We are going into item A, the presentation discussion with the applicants for the vacant District 2 City Council position. And right now we have 2 potential candidates, Mr. Greg Waters and Mrs. Michelle Quednow. I hope I said that right, Michelle. Okay, good. So this is how the process has normally run, and this is how I'd like to run this. We will give each of the members between, we'll say 5 and 10 minutes to give a little presentation about themselves and what their thoughts are and why they would like to be a member of the council. And then at that time, we will entertain motions and from the council members. So it'll take a motion and a second to get a person to appoint to be voted on.
Will we be able to ask questions after?
We will be able to ask questions, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I just want to remind them that both of them have their mics turned off at this time.
So unless there's any other statements that anybody would like to make from the council, or Dan, do you have anything that you would like to say before we start this?
Not really. Thank you for applying. I think we've discussed and have a fairly tight process that's in place. Looking forward to some interaction between the council members and the potential appointees, and excited about getting this going.
Yeah. So with that being said, I think the one last thing, a couple things I want to say is, yeah, thank you first and foremost for stepping forward. It can be a fun job, and it can be a time-consuming job depending on how you make it. So it's all about making things better for our community and for our families. And this is considered a non-partisan position, so we don't deal with party politics or anything like that. This is about us and our issues in our community, and parties don't play a role in how we make decisions in our community. So with that being said, we have Mr. Greg Waters up first on the list here. So, sir, I think everybody has read your declaration, your bio, your letter, and your resume information. So thank you for sending all that. And the floor is yours for as much time as you need, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. If you don't need it all, you don't need it all. And
Sounds
we
great.
have a few questions. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year. My name's Greg Waters. I've been a Lake Mills resident for 20 years. I've raised 3 children in Lake Mills. My youngest is a senior in high school this year, and my wife is a teacher. I've actually worked in the area for about 30 years now, starting with Trek Bicycles. And when I was at Trek, we spun off the fitness division to start a company called Vision Fitness, which actually resided in Lake Mills for about 12 years. During that time, I also founded a division in Brazil, which had some unique challenges as far as the Portuguese language, and a country that wasn't all that accepting of imports, but we did become profitable in the first year, which was real exciting. At Vision Fitness, we built it up, our team built it up, become the best retail brand in the country, leading it with the best products and the best people. We had over 100 employees. And I left the company in 2008 and started another company called Waters Fitness. And that company specialized in indoor cycles or spin bikes. I left that to rejoin Johnson back in 2014 in the business development side. That spun off to become president of the Canadian division, which again had a language barrier as it was in French Canada in Montreal, but it was kind of a unique challenge, a very diverse workforce, which was unique and compared to what we have here in Wisconsin. But it was very rewarding to work with those people and build that company. And recently I started as VP of Sales for Trio Wellness, and that company's relocated to Lake Mills in January, about a year ago, right before the whole COVID thing happened. So we're actually located in the old city building here in Lake Mills. Also, I found very rewarding over the years that the service work that I performed. The community service work, I've been a co-chair for an education commission at St. Denis Schools in Madison. Upon moving to Lake Mills, youth baseball coach, and then later became an assistant wrestling coach at the high school. Also with the Boy Scouts of America, was the troop committee chair there for many, many years, and also the Eagle Scout coordinator, which I really enjoyed doing that because I was a Boy Scout as a youth and also an Eagle Scout. So it was a pleasure working with those gentlemen. I've also been a member of the Economic Development Commission in the city of Lake Mills for about 5 years. And I was a board member for the Fort Healthcare for 5 years as well. So in the last 4 years, I've missed that segment of my life as I've been traveling frequently to Montreal to perform my duties in Canada. And upon being reassigned back here in Lake Mills, look forward to serving the people of Lake Mills once again, and look forward to hopefully, at least I look forward to reviewing the process of becoming a city council member, and I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Okay, I am going to open it up to the other council members first. Doug and Diane, any questions that you have right away?
I just have a question. So now you're based back in Lake Mills with your job?
Yes. Yeah, I'm full-time. I haven't had any business travel for about 18 months now. Of course, COVID helps with that, but I'm 100% in Lake Mills at this point.
Well, if we would need anybody with a foreign language thing for a project, we know who to talk to.
I learned them quickly. I've been forced to do that over the years.
I have a question in that, what do you, are you aware of some of the projects and so on that the city is involved in, and what's your take on them?
I'm sorry, Doug. Currently, I'm not all that familiar with the projects. When I was part of the Economic Development Commission for 5 years for the city of Lake Mills, I was very involved. I served on several subcommittees and really enjoyed working with the people of Lake Mills and helping them come out with positive outcomes. But currently, I would need to get up to speed on that.
So what you got, folks? Anything else? Go ahead, Dan.
I have one question. How did you find out about the opening?
It was one of those things where I was reviewing. I've had a couple people ask me to get involved in things, and I've been trying to decide what would be the right thing to get involved in. And when I saw it in the newspaper, I thought, well, there would be a great opportunity to serve the people of Lake Mills, and decided to apply.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Waters, if I was to throw a question out to you and ask you, who do you think how do I want to put this? I want to make sure I get it right here the first time, and I don't have to say it again.
Okay.
Stakeholders. So if I was to throw a question out there about the key stakeholders in our community, what groups would you look at as being the key stakeholders in our community, the key people that the council should, I don't want to say focus on, but I want to say, should they use to help base their decisions upon?
That's a great question, actually, Mike. Thank you. Of course, the stakeholders are the residents of the city of Lake Mills, but also we have the business community, which sometimes goes underserved. And since I've been a member of the business community in town, I understand some of the issues that the businesses face, and would want to make sure that we're also addressing the needs of the area businesses so that they can prosper.
So what is your definition of a, and I'm sure you probably know this off the top of your head, of a TIF district? What does that mean to you if people say that this plot of land is going to be in the TIF district and the city decides they want to give tax money or TIF money to this person to help develop it? What is the first thing that comes into your mind? Where would you expect that TIF money to come from?
Well, the TIF money comes from, my understanding, from different areas, but the state of Wisconsin plays a role in that as well. But it's my understanding that the TIFs are designed to help develop areas so that businesses can succeed. And of course, it could give them a potential tax break for a number of years, but the that break is normally for to help the city pay back taxes.
So if you were placed onto the city council and you were asked to be part of, let's say, the Parks Board, is
Okay.
there anything on the Parks Board that you know of right now that you think could be done better?
I'm sorry, Mike, I don't have the background to answer that question right now.
Okay, not a problem. I figured I'd throw it out there because that's most likely where the person will end up.
Okay.
But I just wanted to gauge your knowledge on that. And it's nothing that I'm going to hold against anybody if you don't know it, because there's a lot to know in this city and none of us know it all. I think that's all I'm going to ask right now. So
Thank you.
thank you so much for applying. And unless Doug or Diane have another question, I'm going to move over to Michelle. Sounds good. Michelle, the floor is
Thank you.
yours. Thank you, Doug. I'm sorry. Thank you, Greg. Doug-
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. And there's no reverb or anything like that. And I want to apologize in advance if one of my children comes running rampant through the living room. That's just part of life here sometimes, but they are in the basement with their father, so hopefully that won't be an option. But I digress. So thank you to Mike Foster, Steve Wilkie, Diane Frisch, Doug Fritsch, and Vicki Schmidt for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I also want to thank my fellow Greg Waters for presenting great information and the experience he has to offer. I'm honored to be considered with him. I could speak to the lineage in this town with my own home ownership of 10 years in Brookstone. My family lineage of my mother, my grandparents, and their parents all growing up and graduating here in Lake Mills, including what used to be my grandfather actually helped build there was a little schoolhouse over by where the middle school is now. So there's a lot going on back in the day. I'm the mother of 2 daughters, Adeline, who is 9, and she's in her final year at the elementary school, getting too old, and Grace, who is just starting her schooling as the kindergartner there. My husband and I own a small business here in town making gourmet marshmallows, but we don't have a brick and mortar, so there is that. But we have maintained that this location in Lake Mills and in general, just Lake Mills, maybe not this home that we're in now, but definitely in Lake Mills is where we'll continue to grow our family and our community for many, many years to come. I am a special education teacher in Sun Prairie at Patrick Marsh Middle School, but I've been a special ed teacher for over 10 years. I think that this has allowed me to see the possibilities where often others see a deficit. I've also served for the last few years as the chair of Teddy Bear Preschool, which has allowed me to be instrumental in the growth of the preschool, which had to take a slight deficit in this last COVID year, but we did not have to close our doors, and that is extremely rewarding. I'm sure everyone here knows that it's the longest running preschool in this amazing town, and I've raised both of my daughters through Teddy Bear, so I think that is just an amazing one of the wonderful things that this town has to offer. my goal in trying to be part of this council is to help with the future of our town. I have the knowledge of where we've been in that I have many, I still have relatives who tell me of all the things, their memories. I'm part of two very large instrumental people or families of this town that kind of brought it together. And one of them, there's a park named after them. So I kind of feel, I feel a sense of ownership in this town. My grandfather served on city council back in the day. So I think there's some familiarity and need to help build this town in a way that will make my children want to come back and live here as well. So that's my little spiel. I'm ready for questions now.
Who is your grandfather that was on city council?
Don Emery.
Oh, really? Okay. I know Don.
A
New
lot of
Don.
people know Don, especially if you went down to the corner for breakfast with the boys. That he'd often bring me down to show me off, is what my mom used to say.
Doug?
Got the same question for you that I asked Mr. Walters is, how familiar are you seeing some of the projects that have been going on with the city? What's your feeling? You talked about trying to improve things for the city. How do you see that? What's, I guess, your aspirations and some of the projects that have been going on currently with the city?
Great question, Doug. And I'm kind of glad that you asked the same question. Oh, there's a lot of feedback. There we go. The question or the answer I have is that from my understanding, we have a couple of building projects that are coming up. One of them is the building that's taking place down in where the Century Store used to be. There being some kind of a building to not only add residents, but also to add more business space. I feel strongly that that is a really good idea as long as it maintains the authenticity of our small town and the design of Lake Mills, because Lake Mills hasn't changed its downtown since the 1800s, and I think that was when it first started. So I feel very strongly that we should keep the things that make Lake Mills, and try not to make them too industrialized or too stylish, if you will, because I think the people that move to Lake Mills because of its authenticity. It's genuine. Like it feels old, but it's not old mentally. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So thank you. So I even that, I also believe that the housing development that is being talked about in this meeting as well as the previous meeting, which I recently watched, was because I missed the December 15th meeting. I know that there's going to be a population of people who are not going to be in favor of housing that is workforce housing, and I'm using air quotes because a lot of times we associate certain things with certain kinds of housing, and my thought process is more, how is this going to help us as a community develop, not just in number, but in the diversity. What more can we build? How can we build so that we can keep the small town authenticity, but still grow and allow for there to be enough taxes to do the things like improve our schools or give more toward community services that may help those who need it.
Thank you.
Anything else, Doug?
Not right at the moment.
Okay. You've got a little feedback going in your background. If you could mute your mic for a few moments here, that would be much appreciated. Thank you, sir. All right, I'm not going to deviate from my questions either. I'll keep them the same. Just to be fair, at least I'll try to. What is your basic understanding of a TIF and where the individuals that want to build in that TIF would get TIF reimbursements from?
So I am going to go on the same as Greg and tell you that I don't know exactly. I used to remember, I feel like I know what TIF should stand for, because I swear, I have worked with a school that was, that had low income housing. And I feel like TIF has something to do with that. And am I correct in that?
No, but that's okay.
Okay.
So TIF is tax increment financing in tax increment districts.
Okay.
So just for the both of you understand this, it's basically the rate of taxes gets frozen at a specific time and place with input from the joint review board and on and on. Just it's the amount of taxable property is frozen at a specific time. It becomes a tax increment district. Then any increment that is built in that, so let's say we're down at Topol's, they're in a tax increment district. Their building was worth, say, $1 million. They build a new building and it's worth $6 million. That's an increment of $5 million of taxable. That extra money above and beyond where it was frozen at is tax money, not tax money, that from the taxpayers in the community. It's tax money from that individual property that built it, but that tax money gets to be used to fund other projects inside that district. So it helps blighted areas, helps other businesses grow. It helps with updates in property, sewer, stuff like that inside that district only. So that's stuff that whoever gets on, you guys will know it inside and out. I just wanted to get a baseline to see where you were at with it, and there's nothing wrong with not knowing it.
Was that in November? Was that the time that you all were talking about home improvement of a certain area of Lake Mills with regard to like the improvement of certain houses and things like that? Is that kind of what you were talking about, where that money would come from?
No, I don't think so.
Doug, I think probably what she's referring to is when we froze TID number 2 and expanded it for that additional year. That money is for workforce housing, along with the presentation tonight, which is this community development block grant, which is really just us getting our revolving loan fund back, which Greg would know about because the revolving loan fund used to be what we lent businesses. The feds decided to take it back, and then they said they'd give it to us for low-income housing. So those projects kind of tie together, but that TID does do that. There have been amendments to TID, actually TIF, in the last year that allows, in fact, encourages housing developments, not just low income, but housing developments, because it's become identified that housing developments are extremely important to industrial development. If you don't have any place for your workers to live, there's no work. You can't get anybody to work. So there's kind of these combinations, but yeah, they've kind of tied together. I'm going to take one step further and ask, there are a number of buildings downtown that have been built relatively recently, including the Century building. So like the Bank of Lake Mills, Associated Bank, Century building, El Mariachi's, Wise Way, none of those are really within the scope of what you would consider the downtown design. We do require downtown design, but we try and make it, there's got to be a little bit more of a broad spectrum of review when you do those types of things, because historical design and current design don't necessarily match up.
Right.
You have all these conditions that you have to meet in order to be able to meet the building codes nowadays that they didn't meet when most of those buildings were built. So you look at certain design features and increments, and you try. That's when Dustin Wolf talks later. You can listen to him; he'll tell us all that garbage. But that's some of the things that when we're trying to review these, we try and keep in perspective what was there when it came and how it fits into the overall scope of what we're allowed to do. And so those kinds of things drop into there. When Mike said that when a TIF district allows money to be spent in the district, that's true. So like historically our practice has been we only give the developer 50% of the increment generated. And then we use the other 50% of the increment to help encourage other businesses in the area to redevelop. That may not generate as much increment. The only business that we've ever given 100% of their increment to was Topol's, and that's because we really tried to get them. So.
Well, and Topol's has been here a long time.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Hey, Doug, is your mic on again?
Mhm.
Could you turn it off for a second unless you have something? Okay, thank you. I hope that answers. There's quite a lot of explanation, but it's something that whoever gets involved here will have to understand. So I just wanted to get a level set to figure out where both of you were in it. And like I said, it's not a bad thing not knowing about it, because then you have no preconceived ideas of what it is. So you can come in with a clean slate. So I did have the two other questions. Who do you think would be the groups that are the key stakeholders in our community for us to look at? And don't just think citizens and businesses. Think a little less broad, and let me know what your thoughts are.
A little less broad. Okay. Can I pause on that question and answer the other one? Because that was the one that I was thinking of answering it, and I need to come back to that.
Yeah, and then the last question is, if you were put in the position, you ended up as the council representative on the Parks Board, what things do you think could be done better?
So the Parks Board, I've actually, I have a very big investment in the parks, simply because I have children who spend an enormous amount of time in our wonderfully kept parks. One of the things that I would love to hear more about and try to understand is how Wallace Park has gone from its original intent to what it is now. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but what happened was there was a poster, or there was a board of information having to say what it was that was planned, and then that's not what happened. That's, again, not to say that we don't appreciate the things that are there, because I know that those baseball fields bring in quite a bit of revenue. So I'm not naive to that information. But I just wonder also how we are using our resources, and if we can use more resources to add to what we already have going well. And one of the things I feel like we have going well are, like what Greg was saying, where, he's part of Trek. I bike all the time. I don't look like I bike all the time, but I bike all the time. And then I also feel like the bike trails and all of the connections that we have, if that's something that we have any sort of jurisdiction over, that would be great. But mostly I want to improve our parks play stations so that they can be more attractive to kids, because I know that things are far more attractive when they're on the video games, and we need to get them outside.
Okay.
So I think, to answer your other question, Mike, I feel like we need to be thinking about the stakeholders are the people who aren't here yet. So the ones who are here because they love it. The ones who are here because they are here because they have a job here or nearby, or they're commuting like myself. Or we have small businesses that start up here because they love the little bit of town that we are. But what we really need to be thinking about is who is not here and how can we get them here so that we can continue to grow.
Okay. That is a good answer. I like it. So, that's all the questions I have. Diane,
I
do you
have
have
one.
anything else? You
Yeah,
got it.
just kind of a response to your last comment. I wondered if you were aware that we have a certain group of people in town who don't want us to grow. They want to keep it small. Were you aware of that?
I am partially aware of that. I don't want to say that I'm very aware, but I am understanding of that mentality. I grew up in a small town. I grew up in Williams Bay, Wisconsin, which is down by Lake Geneva. So
Right.
it was hop, skip, and jump away from, what we called fib land. Sorry if you're from Illinois, but basically we would get a touring of, the summer tourism scene would come in, and there would be all those Illinois boats on the lake and everything. And so I grew up in a small town that had a lake. I grew up in a small town that had a lot of the haves and the have-nots. I was one of the have-nots because I was one of the first kids in my class to have divorced parents and live in a single parent household. So I grew up knowing the gap, right?
Mhm.
And the gap kind of comes from not enough information. And part of what I want to bring to this position is the understanding of, yes, I definitely love like I said, the authenticity of this town. I have a lot of stake in it, because not just of my own kids, but because of where I've been and where I want to be. But it's not about me. It's about working with the citizens that we have in our town and trying to find common ground. And I think that common ground can be found, but we need to have those difficult discussions, and difficult discussions can't be had if we don't have them. So I feel like one of my strengths, because I work in the field of special education, and there's a lot of negotiation that happens. I mean, I don't know if you are aware of that, but there is a lot of negotiation that happens. I probably should work in a business and get paid a heck of a lot more, but I do it for the kids. So, it's about just finding the commonalities, finding the things that we can discuss and have in common, and be intellectual about it, so that we can build each other up instead of tearing each other down. And as far as the group of people that want to stay small, I'm not saying we're going to turn into some prairie. I know some prairie. I know how exponentially they grew in the last and still are growing. It is out of control. I don't want that for Lake Mills. I don't want us to lose our special place in Jefferson County, because we really are a very special place in Jefferson County. Like, in looking at all of the towns in Jefferson County, Lake Mills is kind of like the shining star, and I want to keep it that way.
Well, I just brought it up because I didn't want either one of you, whoever gets the position, to expect to please everybody, because you can't please everybody. There's no way you can, because what one group of people in town want is the opposite of what some other people in town want. And I don't want to burn you out before anybody gets started here. So you just do the best you can. You know, and I think either one of you has a fairly good basis for that. So thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Michelle. I want to ask Mr. Waters if he wants to put any last comments in on what Diane had asked about the different groups, some that want us to grow and some that don't want us to grow. So if you got any comments on that, feel free to speak up now, Mr. Waters.
Thanks, Mike. Can I also go back to the question about the stakeholders?
You sure can.
I agree with Michelle as far as I think the youth is an important stakeholder that we need to consider. The youth needs to have a place in the community, and of course the Parks and Rec is a great place for that, and the Rec Department putting together all their different programs. So I've been a supporter of the youth activities throughout my time here, and I think that's an important stakeholder that we need to consider at City Council as well. As far as Diane's question about not being able to please everybody, welcome to my life. In the business world, that happens all the time, and you of course work to find the best solutions and to work with everybody as much as you can, but you know, some people it's just impossible to work with. But you do your best, and you of course keep a good moral compass, and you do the right things for the community and for the community as a whole. And I agree with Michelle that I don't think we want to be growing overnight, but to have some progressive growth and to be a progressive community is a good thing as well. So hopefully, having the services of Culver's is a good thing. Having some of these additional businesses really help the community as a whole. So hopefully we'll be able to continue down that road to a certain degree.
Yeah, grow smart.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's all the questions, unless Mr. Fritsch has anything else.
So,
Okay. So at this point in time, what we're going to do is I will entertain motion for anybody that would like to make a motion to nominate one of the applicants or the other. And if we get a motion and a second on one or both of the folks, we will do a roll call vote on one or both of those folks. So the floor is open now for nominations.
I'd like to nominate Greg Waters. Oops, I have to turn it on. Yep, it's on
You're on,
for
okay.
the positions.
Is there a second? I would like to nominate Michelle Quednow. And I am looking for a second.
I will second that.
Okay. So we have one nomination going to a vote, and I'm very sorry, Mr. Waters. We are going to vote on Ms. Quednow for the position right now. Could I get a roll call vote from Misty, please? Maybe she's got her mic off. There she is.
Mr. Fritsch,
Aye.
Diane,
No,
Mr. Foster,
Aye.
motion passed 2-1.
Congratulations, Michelle, and I really appreciate your time, Mr. Waters. Keep an eye out if something else comes up again. feel free to come on in and put your name in again. And obviously, we're always looking for people on boards and committees that you already know. But thank you for coming back and for coming back here to Lake Mills to be part of the business community here again.
I would like to add that I would like to thank both candidates for their applications. I think they're both fine candidates. It's very hard to make a choice.
Yeah, and I would agree. Very, very tough decision. But Mr. Waters, I think you had something you were going to say?
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for having me tonight, and I wanted to congratulate Michelle and thank her for the job that she does. I know that working with the special education students is a tough job, and have a lot of respect for that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. It has its ups and downs for sure.
Okay, so with that being said then, thank you again, Mr. Waters. Michelle, next steps will be for you to contact the city clerk tomorrow, and they will get you in the process of getting all your paperwork, everything signed that you'll have to sign. And we will see you at the next meeting. And one thing to keep in mind, as you're building up to the next meeting, it's okay to talk to one other council member about anything. But if you talk to one council member about something, you cannot talk to another council member about that same thing unless we are in open session. So if you have questions, things like that, I know you got my number. You can reach out to me and we can clear things up for you. But yeah, get with the clerk tomorrow. Get with, I'm not sure who's going to be in. It's Misty or Heather, one of those two. And I believe they have the computers and stuff, and hopefully they can get you set up sooner than later with your city council or with the city address for email and all the other stuff that you need. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And look forward to serving with you for what, the next year and a couple months,
Yeah.
year and a half, something, until the next election, if I get elected. That is, we'll see. If I don't get elected, then it's just four more months.
I just want to comment that I'd like to make sure that the city makes a effort to let Michelle see that video that we saw, well, for us a little bit while ago, but I found it very helpful to clarify what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And it's better to teach and prevent than to correct and undo. So, but it's a good video. So
Yeah, great point. Yeah.
Mrs. Fritsch, I think you're talking about in the scope of your authority that was put out by the
Yep.
league, and that is part of the council orientation.
oh, well, that's good. I didn't know it was. Thank you.
Okay. I think it's time for us to move on with the rest of our meeting here. We're on item C, presentation of the workforce housing site. And is that you, Dustin?
That is me. Yes.
Yeah. It's all your show.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm also joined by Anna Feltham from our office. She's been helping assemble all of the RLF closeout documentation. I am going to attempt to share a screen with you, so please let me know if you can see this. It's just a little easier, I think, for me to talk from.
Yep.
This is obviously all on the city's webpage in the agenda. So if anybody's listening at home, they can certainly get all this material. But it's just easier for me to present from this. So everyone's able to see this presentation?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we can see it.
Excellent. So I'll be brief. I know we have other items on the agenda tonight. I'll hit the high points, but this is the revolving loan fund that the city has had in place for a number of years, and I'll say at the end of its useful life. At the time has come where we need to close out the revolving loan fund, and we have the opportunity to use it for some other means, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail. But what we're referencing here is using it for workforce housing opportunities. I know.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes,
Can I just bug you
of course.
for 1 second? I'm sorry. Diane, you asked the question about our upcoming public hearings.
Yes.
That is this. That is this
Yes.
information. So this should answer your questions.
This is one of them.
Well, it's all part of the same thing.
That is correct, Mr. Foster. We have
Yeah.
a series of public hearings we have to hold related to specific items for closing out the revolving loan fund and using those dollars for workforce housing.
So, what year did it start?
I'd have to defer to Steve on that.
Was that 210?
The RLF?
Yeah.
No, it was here when I got here. So
Yeah.
it was part of the spinoff that was up at the Ferguson spinoff that was up at on Tyranny Park Road. God, dang. The day I needed it, I can't remember what it is. But anyways, we got a revolving loan fund as part of the upgrade of that.
The land by the market up in that area?
No, the land by McDonald's.
Oh, okay. All
It
right.
was that company used to be located down on well, there was a company that was located on
Jefferson Street.
yes.
Are you talking about Standish?
Standish, yes. It was originally Standish, and then
Yes,
it changed its name. By the time I got here, it was called something else.
Okay.
But anyways, it was originally
The place, the land now has mobile homes on it, parked on it.
yes,
Became,
RVs.
They're
RVs.
yeah,
renting.
it became Hamlin for a while.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the site where we got the revolving loan fund, and it was $500,000, and we lent out a number of dollars over the course of the last 20 years. The last one that had borrowed money from it was Culver's. What happened was the state decided, or actually the federal government decided to call all that money back in. And so if you had the RLF prior to 1990, you got to keep your money. If you didn't, you had to turn it back in. With the caveat that if you had a program in the workforce housing block, you could ask for that money back. And you had to submit a program that qualified. And so that's what this is.
Okay. Thank you for explaining it.
Wonderful. So the presentation here, I won't, like I said, I'll be very brief on. The focus is on this housing aspect, which certainly has been a discussion item for the council and other community entities for a number of years, actually. Housing affordability and workforce housing for local, specifically to provide housing opportunities for local businesses. We've heard continuously that has been an issue. So this first slide, we're just showing you that while Lake Mills is predominantly owner occupied, 60% as of 2018, most of your housing stock was constructed before 2010. So only 3% of your housing stock has been constructed in the last decade. And then the graph is showing you homeowner and renter cost burden households. So it's really just telling you that about 30% of your households are cost burden, which means they spend more than 30% of their household income just on their housing costs. So this is something that we certainly want to address, is to make housing more affordable for whether it's residents or people who want to move into the community. And the focus is on workforce housing. This is some charts just talking about existing housing demands, percentage of owner occupied versus renter occupied. Medium home values have kind of fluctuated over the past decade. Not surprising, coming out of 2010, things kind of dipped a bit and then have rebounded in the last few years. But the red table there is showing you the percentage of families and people in the community whose income in the past 12 months is below the poverty level. So you're looking at 7 and 8% families or people that are below the poverty level. So this is a concern for housing affordability. We're seeing an uptick in housing stock, but we need more housing stock. And the other issue is housing stock that can be afforded by people who meet certain criteria. Again, workforce housing. So as we'd mentioned, your revolving loan fund, which we'll say is the CDBG is the Community Development Block Grant. That's the federal program that provided the funding. As we said, it's ending. There's about $500,000 available. Betsy could probably give us a very accurate number, but for discussion purposes, this is what we're talking about. So it's a fair amount of money to retain within the community to provide positive projects in the community. It is eligible for a number of types of projects. Our focus is going to be on public facilities. So we do have to submit a grant application and meet criteria, and those are the series of public hearings we'll be having at your next meeting in relation to that application to complete it. Public facilities eligible projects are everything from land acquisition to architectural engineering costs. Mostly it's physical improvements, right? Right-of-way improvements such as streets, sidewalks, utilities, stormwater, et cetera. Things that add cost to making development go. And those costs will increase over time, of course, but typically those are the things that just the minimum cost of developing a lot could immediately price people out of home ownership in a community like Lake Mills. So as we're noting here, the dollars can't be used for the construction of actual new housing, but again, it can be for getting properties turnkey, meaning available to be constructed on. Again, the dollars have to go to benefit low and moderate income persons, and there are federal charts related to that based upon household size for Jefferson County. For a family of 4, that amount is about $61,000 is the annual income. So again, it's to make home ownership more available to people. And again, there has to be a deed restriction associated with the development of the land that ensures at least 51% of the housing units will be occupied by people who meet that criteria. And there's a separate part to this, is a screening that the city would go through when providing land to people to build on. Our timeline here, as I mentioned, at your next council meeting on the 19th, we have a series of hearings and hopefully council approvals on the application materials. We have to submit everything to the state by the end of the month. And then you have 2 years to use these dollars. So that's just that last item there. As we had talked about, we are looking at combining this with the 1-year affordable housing extension that was approved at a previous council meeting for TID number 2. TID number 2 will be extended by 1 year, and those monies will also be used for low moderate income housing development or opportunities as directed by the council. It's notable that while we've talked about it kind of in the public realm, and Steve could go into more detail, business owners, your employers have been expressing concerns about attracting and keeping employees because of housing costs. There are businesses here that have to provide busing to their manufacturing plants. There are people who would like to live here. You have an excellent school system, of course, high quality of life, but they are priced out of home ownership in Lake Mills. So again, the idea here is to try to bolster that segment of housing opportunity. The property we're talking about is the lands south of the Light and Water Building on Industrial Drive. The lands are owned by the city. They are, I don't want to say, when we say not highly regarded, if they were in high demand, they would have developed by now. And there are some wetland features on there that have to be worked around. This is kind of the last of the land. This site is about 17 acres, as you can see highlighted in red. There just has not been a massive amount of interest for these properties that are owned by the city, which is why we feel that because of their proximity to Wallace Park, proximity to daycare, proximity to employment, that they are an excellent opportunity to develop for a workforce housing subdivision. As you can see, that Brookstone is to the further to the east. There are apartments to the northeast. But really, housing in this area would be immediately adjacent to Wallace Park. And I don't know, Steve, if you want to just comment briefly on kind of some of the trials and tribulations you've had trying to sell property here and attract development to the site.
Could I just interrupt and ask one?
Of course. Doug, I think you're muted.
What we would be doing, just for my clarification, is basically providing with that money the streets, the sewer, etc., the utilities, and then we would sell the properties like we have in the TIF district or to the property owners, provided they meet the certain requirements. Is that correct?
That is correct. You would be using the monies for physical improvements to have someone have a shovel-ready lot for a home site, and then a owner would come in to work with the city on agreement for the land and to build a home meeting certain criteria on the site within a specific amount of time, and those people would have to meet, or at least 51% of them would have to meet the low moderate income threshold. But the goal is to have it all available to low moderate income and owners at the end of the day.
Okay.
That's a little bit of a broad question because Dustin hasn't given you an idea of what the absolute minimum house construction costs are. So when we look at this, we're designing this in what we call a traditional neighborhood development, which meets certain standards under state planning laws. And then the type of house, we may have to help get built. These are intended to be owner-occupied homes that we sell. Once we sell them, we're done with them.
It's an excellent point, Steve. The goal is not that you are going to be a landlord. The goal is to help defray the cost of home ownership or land development for a single-family owner-occupied house. Typically, there is for a developer a cost of, I've seen as low as $35,000, upwards of $55,000 per lot, just in infrastructure costs, right? And that doesn't include, profitability for the developer, et cetera. That's a huge hurdle to overcome, and you haven't put a shovel in the ground yet. So as Steve said, we are proposing a development that is in keeping with the traditional neighborhood development. That is kind of historic development that you would even have seen in and around your downtown, right? They are smaller lots. They are lovely, typically 2-story houses, though ranches could happen. They are narrower streets. They are typically alley loaded. And we'll show some of these things here, but it's focusing on, pedestrians, accessibility to important amenities such as the daycare, employment in the park. So these are typical developments, and the image in the lower right is you have development like this in Lake Mills now. You have this on Lake Street to the west of Mills Drive, just north of the industrial park already. These homes are alley loaded and they have short setbacks and big front porches. But many communities have been going this route with traditional development over the past, I'll say, couple decades, kind of getting back to how we used to develop land in that pre-war time period. So the image on the left is in Madison. You can see that there are, or excuse me, in Cottage Grove. We have some other images here that show in Madison. Again, these may seem dense just from the field, but these are 5,000 to 6,000 square foot properties, which are not out of line for what we've seen in historic downtowns or adjacent to historic downtowns. The one on the right is City of Milwaukee. Many of these are alley loaded in most communities. You can see in Madison, they're using alleys.
What do you mean by alley loaded?
You would use an alley to access your garage. As we go back up here, if you see on the image on the right, there's no driveways that open up onto the roadway. There's just sidewalks. They make
Milwaukee has a lot of that.
Milwaukee has it. Madison has it. We're talking Wanakee, Sun Prairie, Cottage Grove. Again, a number of. You have this in Lake Mills as well. Let me pull up an image. Here we go. You can see this. Are you able to see this image? How's power on it? This is east of or north of the industrial park.
Right.
So you have this product. This is the from the aerial. You can see you have this specific product. They're on 55-foot wide lots, and they access an alley. So this is not something foreign to Lake Mills. We are just proposing, instead of a handful of them, to have an entire subdivision to develop this way. And I'm just showing you that Fitchburg has been doing this. Wanakee, City of Madison have all been have developed this type of subdivision in their community in recent years. These are the houses that have been approved for use in certain communities. And this is the type of thing that we'll be looking at. These are generally 1,500 to 2,000 square foot homes. You can see that their cost ranges generally around $270,000, $280,000. These are without basement. Basement is an added cost that we are not looking to include on these sites. We do have some high water table that we need to be mindful of. We have some sewer depth issues we have to be mindful of. And again, a basement just is added cost. So the goal here is majority single family detached houses without basements. And then you can see the twin home, which would be what we call a zero lot line. So those are each owner occupied houses. They're single family attached versus single family detached, meaning no connected houses. But again, all of what is being proposed is owner occupied. That is the key here. So this is just showing you typical street sections and alley sections. You can see here that we would have an alley with garages in the back. Still have a very functionable backyard. Front is narrower streets. Wide streets cost more. We would have parking on one side of the street rather than both, and you'd have 2 travel lanes. You'd still have a wide street tree terrace and then 5-foot sidewalks. Setbacks of the homes are typically around 12 to 15 feet because you don't need a big setback because you're not parking a car in front of them, right? That's usually why houses get set back further, is because if you have the garage coming off of it, it better be at least 20 feet, if not 25 feet, to allow a car to be parked in front of a garage on a driveway without impacting the sidewalk. So the street width is only modestly narrower than your current standard. Your current standard is around 32 feet back to curb. We are looking at something around 28 feet, 29 feet. So while it doesn't seem like much, that adds up cost over time based on the number of linear feet. This is development in Madison. So you can see that a 28-foot curb to curb allowed for parking narrow streets, narrower drive with. There is the issue where, yes, if we have parking on one side of the street, two cars could certainly pass each other. If you were to allow parking on both sides of the street, someone might have to wait a second for one car to come through while oncoming traffic is coming. But again, these are slow streets. These are not intended to be high-speed roadways. You know, these are neighborhoods. You should be driving slowly in a neighborhood. And then the alleys in Madison they're using are 16 feet. I think we were proposing 20 or 24 feet because we just want a little more where people are backing out of garages and such. And then this is the development plan that we have. We looked at 10 different alternatives along Industrial Drive, just to orient you here. North is to the right, where if you can see the hand here, this is the Light and Water Building. So obviously our site is immediately south of the Light and Water Building. The daycare center is the red roof building that you see on the left edge. And we are showing a series of phases for design and construction. The first phase, as you can see here, are lots generally fronting along Industrial Drive, some stormwater management, and some alleys, because again, we want them alley loaded. So there'll be no driveways coming out onto Industrial Drive. We would stub in the streets. The utilities exist under Industrial Drive or across the street from Industrial Drive. The only thing in the back in the alleys would be electrical. But the homes would have short setbacks, would face Industrial Drive. Again, across the street is Wallace Park. So those homes would be facing Wallace Park. So phase one would be the focus of the revolving loan fund dollars. We will have a cost estimate from Strand shortly that will show the cost by phase. As we go east, excuse me, as we go west into phase 2 and 3, once you go to phase 2 and 3, you have to have a lift station because of the topography and the depth of utilities in Industrial Drive. So the focus again here is phase 1 to get that up and running, and then looking at utilizing the TID $2 where we can for phase 2 and or 3. And again, working with different state and federal entities on procuring other funding mechanisms to undertake phase 2 and 3. So these lots, as we're showing here, in total, we were looking at about 77 dwelling units. But the first phase, as you can see in the upper left, the area outlined in pink is about 20 lots, right? And it has some minimal linear feet in alley and roadway and minimal utilities. Obviously, we'll have laterals being stubbed, but the mains in the roadways are very minimal, generally about 100 feet in depth. So, and stormwater management, of course, in the first phase for all the development, because we all know about the flooding issues that can be experienced in Lake Mills. So this isn't.
I got another question that concerns me, especially for phase 2 and 3 is you've got a detention basin there. What's the green area there? Is that marshy area?
Those are wetlands. So the western edge has a pretty high wetlands. There are other pockets of wetlands that the city is allowed to fill because they are isolated. We do have to buy credits in a wetland bank for that. The total wetlands that would be impacted is about 0.8 of an acre.
Now, my question is, if you build there and you get
Can you repeat that, Doug?
if you build there and we get a heavy storm, are you going to get flooding?
No, there will be no basement. Let's start there. And we will have to bring some earth and fill in to raise some of the grade. But no, you won't have flooding.
Would that drain into the drainage ditch?
Again, we haven't
Yes.
fully engineered this, but the drainage
Yeah.
ditch is on the north edge and on the west edge.
Well, the north and the west.
Yes.
It'll drain into ditch 35 and on. And if you remember, Doug, when we did the industrial park, we created 75-foot shelves on each side of ditch 35 to store an extensive amount of stormwater. So that was the first question asked when we looked at it was, can we keep this so that there's no issues with any flooding? And yeah, that's not a problem.
And again, no basements makes a big difference for flooding issues.
Okay.
So again, this is intended to be done in phases. There isn't timing on phase 2 and 3. What we're pressed with right now is getting our application approved by the city council following the public hearings and submitted to the state by the end of the month. There could be some tweakings from these design iterations. Of course, moving forward, we'll have to sort out the housing types, to be constructed, what they're going to look like. But the other communities that have been doing this around the state have a series of houses that can be chosen from, working with specific builders, to construct these homes. So this is what we're going to be bringing forward. There's no action on this tonight, is my understanding. Correct, Steve? It's just a presentation.
Just a presentation.
Yep. Just so you could see and hear about it before we get to next month, or the next meeting on the 19th.
Can you,
Even with all this help, the homes are still relatively expensive.
Yeah, we do still need to work with some builders, some select builders, on trying to figure out ways to refine costs. Those are the numbers that we're seeing from City of Milwaukee and out towards Sun Prairie. So again, it is expensive to build homes. It just is. And one of the ways to reduce that cost is by, utilizing dollars you already have at your disposal to get them ready to be constructed on. And these communities, they generally sell the land for $1 with the commitment that they build a home on it within a certain number of months, and meeting those specific criteria.
With the uncertainty of the pandemic, adding a roll of the dice, how much uncertainty do you see this in the future causing a problem for us to sell this out?
Well, phase 2 and phase 3 is a different conversation. And keep in mind, you have this $500,000 available. If you don't do anything with this, you're just giving it back to the state. So
Yeah.
I look at that as free money. You also have about $1 million from keeping TID 2 open one more year to utilize for this. So I don't think the cost to do this is money I'll say you already have.
Okay.
But I'm not going to say the absorption rate is going to be 10 homes a year. We're going to have to gauge it based upon phase 1. But this is still an opportunity. Phase 2 and phase 3 wouldn't be undertaken until we know we have funding that doesn't include general levy to complete them. This is land you have owned for years. You've already paid for developing along it, right? Industrial Drive through the TID. It has been sitting there vacant. So putting some homes on there, certainly, which meets the needs for your business community, bringing potentially new residents in, and puts value on land that, quite frankly, right now has zero value because it's owned by the city.
I want to hit his question though. We sold the $125,000 in building permits included at least 13 new homes last year on lots or for houses that were costing over $300,000. So even if you got into the $270,000 range, your absorption rate over a 2 to 3 year period you shouldn't have any problem. And I know, we have firefighters all the time that we lose because they can't afford to transition from an apartment into a home because it's so expensive to live in Lake Mills. $280,000 or $270,000, I really don't think of as an affordable home. But based on where we're at right now, that's probably as good as it's going to get, and we should be able to market those. We may have to make a few adjustments here and there, but over the long run, this is going to sell out.
And that was the question I was going to ask, is how do we, and who's responsible for marketing?
We're going to kind of do an RFP, and we're going to look at what types of housing products are available and then work with the people to get that. Once the housing product is picked and there are some opportunities, the people they're going to come in and sell those houses without any problem.
Yeah, I guess what I was asking is who's going to be the advocate maybe for talking with local businesses, these businesses that have folks that want to buy houses in our community. Is that the city going to do that, or?
We've already been doing that, Mike.
Okay.
So it's kind of something Dan and I have been working on for a while. So
Okay.
As far as that goes, yeah, I think, when you look at it and just put a sign up that says there's a house in this market range, you're going to get questions, especially if you have a sign out there that says call. So, because there's just it's hard to find housing in a certain market range right now.
Yeah, and my big concern is the folks you mentioned getting hopefully first crack at getting these places, like the firemen that have to leave, the people that are already working here and maybe they want to move here, and looking at those folks and trying to market to those folks first before we start going outside and trying to bring other people in, because there's no guarantee that those people coming into the community will actually work in some of these businesses.
We may have to, particularly for the people that work in those businesses, it's going to be a situation where we might have to provide some level of additional funding to help get them to the point where a bank will lend them money. But we can also work with Jefferson County. They have a fund for that. Roxanne Whitty manages that. And so there are several other options that we have that we can work through. I can work with Roxanne quite a bit on these types of issues and continue to make sure that we hit those markets. Generally what we find is people can make the monthly payments because they're paying that for rent in an apartment right now. The problem is being able to save up enough money to make the down payment to be able to get the money to buy the house.
Yeah.
And that's probably the market that the area that we'll have to step in and be kind of some gap financing under some method.
Sure. All right, that's all I had. Was that the whole spiel from you?
Yeah, that's all of the presentation. Yes, I tried to keep it brief.
Well,
It'll be on next council agenda, and it will be long.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I apologize for. There's just a lot of housekeeping items we have to take care of.
Yeah. And those were some of the questions I had and Diane had. So I just want to make sure she understood that how all of this worked hand in hand with the public hearings that we're going to have next month, or next meeting, excuse me.
I have a question. Okay. Phase one, what we will, tell me if I'm right or wrong. When we do phase one, we will choose a building company to kind of do phase one. And that will help make it so that the houses have some continuity, that you don't have, you know, modernistic next to traditional, next to whatever. Is that how that will work?
Yes, you would work with a builder, and you would have, as you can see on the screen, a series of, some have 2, some have 4 housing choices, and then you can obviously individualize them a little bit, but it's the builder knows what they're designing, and they really know what it's going to cost. So,
Okay,
but
that's
you
all
will
I
have
wanted
approved
to
that.
know.
Yes, you will
Yeah.
have approved all of that in advance.
We're looking at a market that, I mean, we're not putting granite countertops in and high-end
Right, right.
furnishings in these places. We want them to be a starter home. Then once these people get established and start getting up, they can make all the changes just like a lot of other people make to their homes once they're in and established. But you've got to be able to get into that first home. You've got to be able to find that spot that makes that market available. And now most builders don't want to build to that market right now because there's no profit in it. So we're the group that picks up no profit actions.
Okay, but it will end up looking nice along Industrial Drive, not hodgepodge.
Well, you know, that's an interesting conversation piece that planners debate all the time because wasn't there some place in New Jersey, Seabrook or something like that, where every house was the same? And now they have this big fight to save them all because they all ended up being so individually different after years and years of modifications. And so, yeah, and most subdivisions want their houses to have some level of variety. I'm assuming that what we want here is to make sure that the house hits the market price.
Right.
Yep.
Because we have a desire, and they're going to have to fit. We're looking at relatively small lots, and the advantage to that is that the taxes on those homes will not be real high. They don't have a lot of real estate. We don't have a lot of streets and curbs and sidewalks to maintain, and so the cost per lot is substantially less than what we might see on bigger lots. So what we're trying to do is control the initial cost. You know, it used to be, there was that TV show where Ty went in and gave you this beautiful home and then you couldn't afford to pay the taxes. That's not what we want to do here. We want to make sure that the people have a nice home, but they also can afford to pay their taxes and keep their houses up.
And when you sell the house, you lose control over it. And like Levittown, built after World War II, that community is now changed quite a bit from the original buildings that were put up.
Yep, and that's what I hope happens. I want these people to live in their own homes. That's the advantage of this. I don't want it being low-income housing, apartments, or those types of things. I want people who needed the opportunity to get a start to be able to get in their own home and then manage it the way they want to manage their own home.
Yeah, well, it gives them ownership into the community too. So that's a big benefit for us.
As Steve said, you know, it could be firemen, could be newer teachers into the community. Again, there just isn't, the price of entry is very challenging for people into home ownership because the reason Steve said, they don't have large down payments, so then they have, you know, mortgage insurance on top of everything else. It's just, how can we rein in the costs and provide a good housing product?
Yeah.
I have a question. Would it be allowed for senior citizens who have sold their big home in town here and then wanted to downsize before they go into assisted living?
Income issue.
Yeah,
That's
the cornerstone is we want to make sure you're hitting a certain income level.
Okay, so they would be too rich.
Yep. So again, there's a lot of details with the home ownership and the selling of land that's got to come later, but the first part is getting the application in so we can keep things moving along and we don't lose those dollars.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. I appreciate that, and we'll talk more about this next meeting. Okay, item D, discussion decision on development agreement for 1204 South Main Street, Formul Development LLC. And what do we got here? We have a motion. Could I get that title read, please?
City Council Motion 21-1-1-1, authorizing the city manager to execute a development agreement with Formul Development LLC for Drumlin Crossing Residential Condominium Development at 1204 South Main Street.
Okay, do I have a motion for this?
Which agenda item are we on? I just got back to my agenda.
D, Delta. Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yep.
that.
I'll move motion 21-1-1-1.
I'll
Thank
second
you,
it.
Doug. And thank you, Diane. Okay, we can discuss this. It looks like we have a lot of good information in here. First, we have the developer's agreement, which was some good reading. And it does, I sat down and read it all because I want to make sure I understood every bit about it. And we do have the agreement memos, the CSM, construction documents, pro forma, and plans for the, I thought we had plans for.
Yeah, there is at the
just
bottom.
just the 3 unit. So, who would like to start us off with this one? Is this you, Dan, or is this?
I can start.
Okay, Steve.
This is in TID number 5, which is tax increment district, which uses tax increment financing, so TIF, to finance this. So this is, all this money that we're handing out here is generated by Formul Development through the method that you described earlier, where the original tax dollars that were paid were frozen, and anything above what was the original amount now goes into the tax increment district. In this case, it was owned by the city, so there was 0 taxes paid. So 100% of any taxes that would be paid on this site go into the tax increment district. You can see that the pro forma gives you an idea of how much money will be generated over that time. The gentlemen that are doing this development have asked for a little over $540,000 to be able to make the improvements to that site that they feel qualify for TID. Dan and I have reviewed it and agreed and put together the development process and how the funding would occur, which is $240,000 in the first year, $100,000 in the third year, and then another $200,000 in, is it year 4, Dan, or year 3?
No, the first payment is 2021, $240,000. The second payment he's eligible for in 2022. That's the $100,000 payment. And then the third payment eligible for in 2023. So a 3-year schedule, and it is on a 4-year build-out schedule for completion of the project.
Yeah, so it does rely on the initial construction of the first 3 buildings before anything is reimbursed back. But if you're looking at the total increment overall, that's still, once it's completed, should leave us with what, 1.3 million in increment that could be utilized for other development in that district.
During the life of the TID, that's optimistic, but yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
I think the important thing to focus on is that build out, and as Mr. Moulet stated in his kind of opening statement during public comment, is it's an aggressive build out. While the agreement states building 1, that 3 unit, as the original building in 2021, they anticipate actually getting into the second building in 2021 and moving this process along even more quickly than the phasing that is described in the agreement, which would certainly benefit the city because increment will be created and tax revenue will be collected. But it will also speed up their process of repaying any amounts that are tax increment financing that are provided to them. So it behooves them to get moving as quickly as possible and get sticks and mortar up in the ground. But there is we are funding some money here in reliance on that build-out schedule. And the assessment. I mean, the assessment is the key thing. They're looking at, well, we went a conservative route and valued each from an assessed standpoint, each unit at $300,000. And based on the research that the developer has done, based on our research, that definitely appears to be a very attainable number for this development. So
Yeah,
16 units at $300,000 a piece is translated to that 4.8 million over the term of the development.
Yeah, so Mike, when you look at that 1.8 million and take the 540 off, that's a conservative number. We could make a lot more than that because these units are going to sell between 370 and 420. So a $300,000 estimate in the pro forma gives us some room to work with.
Yeah, it just gives everybody an idea of what could be expected if all stuff goes as planned. But yeah, you're right. It could be more. One question I have is I was looking through the developer's agreement and talking about what's near and dear to everybody's heart nowadays is groundwater and flooding and stuff like that. Is there some initial retention bio ponds in the first phase?
Their design incorporates a couple ponds, one between buildings, I think 3 and 4, and one along the north edge of the property. Those are quality level ones required by the DNR. They're not the ones that we had talked about substantially at the last meeting that I think needs to be ultimately added, but this site is still better than what historically had been there.
Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, yes, we have reviewed substantially the issues related to flooding and stormwater in the site and have mitigated them to a level that's higher than had ever been there before.
Okay. All right. Diane or Doug?
I have no questions.
No questions?
I don't either.
Okay. Well, if that is the case, then I guess we can call a vote, please.
Diane?
Was that a Diane?
Yes.
Diane?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
Okay, item E, discussion decision on state municipal agreement for transportation alternatives program. Could I get that motion read, please, the title read, please?
City Council Motion 21-1-1-2, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement between the City of Lake Mills and the State of Wisconsin for a transportation alternatives program.
All right, I'll entertain a motion of adoption for this.
So moved.
Thank you, Diane. And I'll go ahead. Thank you, Doug. So we got a motion and a second. And this is for sidewalks. Steve, you gonna jump on this grenade?
Yeah, this is the grant that we were awarded, that we've talked about, that we applied for and noted that we had received. It breaks out the costs. So we are going to receive $432,400 in federal funds. Total estimated cost to be $147,820. So our portion of the project is going to be $115,420.
And this will complete that whole stretch except for that. I thought there was a small stretch we weren't going to complete. Or does this complete the whole thing? From Owen to Topeka or something like that?
It actually does a lot more than that.
Yeah,
but it does do from Topeka to Mills Drive, East Mills
Okay.
Drive. It does from the end where we ended up there at the cemetery on the south side of Tyranina Park Road,
uh-huh,
across from the market, and brings it down to that lift station there, and then crosses by Greenwood State Bank's new branch there,
oh, okay,
and incorporates a couple features for making it safer to cross the street. Like a landing in the middle so that people can stand and have a place of protection in crossing that street, because traffic moves a little bit faster and that intersection can get busy. It also goes down by the south side of the city towards St. Paul's, and then there are a couple other ones that are incorporated in there.
okay,
But it covers a pretty large section of sidewalk throughout the course of the city. It doesn't
Yeah.
leave many major projects left.
yes. And these are all those spots that we don't really have properties on that we could do a special assessment against for a lot of it, so.
Actually, this does have about 50% of them do have.
Does it really?
Yes. So
Okay,
yeah, it says the nature of the work is to construct 7 segments of 5-foot wide sidewalk. Segment 1 is 1,900 feet along the southwest side of County Highway V from Topeka Drive to East Mills. Now
Yeah.
that is a lot of public street along that park. There is some other, but if you remember, that one section has sidewalks on those people's backyards abut County Highway V, so they have a sidewalk on the front of their property, and then they'll have one on the back. So that was one of the reasons why we thought it would be fair to assess. Segment 2 is the addition of 300 feet of sidewalk and a pedestrian refuge island along County Highway V south of the market.
Yep.
That again is at the cemetery. And then segment 3 is 2,000 feet of sidewalk along State Highway 89 to connect St. Paul's Church, which is a a tax exempt property, and the school district's property is tax exempt. So you have that.
Mhm.
Then segment 4 is 1,000 feet of sidewalk on the north side of County Highway V to bridge the gap between retail establishments. I think that's from the market to Quick Trip.
Oh, okay.
Segment
Yeah,
5 is
there is a
400.
house there.
Here we're getting into segment 5 is 450 feet on both sides of Marguerite Street to connect residential neighborhoods. That would be eligible. We would normally have a special assess that. Segment 6 is on Reach Street. We'd normally special assess that. And section 7 is on Pope Street in Prairie. We'd normally have assessed that. But because it's kind of like South Main Street. We didn't do any special assessments on South Main Street where there hadn't been any sidewalks before, just because the state paid for all of it. So we're just continuing that concept, is that if the state pays for it or the federal government, we don't special assess. We try and get as much money in as we can. So it's kind of like, once the sidewalk is built, the city maintains it in the future. In this case, you got it built for you by the feds, and the city will continue to maintain it for you. So.
All right. Any questions, Diane or Doug?
Yeah, this takes care of most of the big gaps. All of them, or there's still a few?
The biggest one yet is anything out to Brookstone along County Highway B. Last year we did do that bike trail along the south side of Wallace Park, but it's got that gap there by JJ Chocolate. But that's probably the only significant one left.
I've got a recommendation. I know there's some small stretches where, for example, there's apartment buildings. I've always felt that apart with the number of people who could possibly benefit from the use of a sidewalk in apartment buildings should have a sidewalk.
Well, this has already been awarded, so
Yeah, I'm not talking about this one. It's for future considerations.
all right.
All right. Is there any other discussion or questions?
Probably the biggest issue that isn't really leveled in here is that design is listed as 0, but really design is totally our cost. So while it's not as big as like a highway project with water and sewer in it, we will have some engineering costs in the design, like we did on Mulberry.
You got any ideas how much?
I'm going to say somewhere between 60 and 90,000.
Well, hopefully we won't get another water hole like we did on Mulberry.
Oh, pumping the water
Yeah.
out.
Forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, Mulberry, when we do Grant Street and Prospect, you may see that, but you won't see that on these projects.
Good. You need a motion?
No, I
We
think-
got one.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, we're at a point of calling the roll call vote, please then.
Mr. Foster,
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
motion passed 3-0.
All right. Let's see here. So F and G, both of you, both Diane and Doug saw the extra material that was sent via email
Yeah.
today. So we'll start with resolution F 21-1. Could I get that read, please? A title read, please, for the resolution.
Resolution 21-1, authorizing the granting of a privilege in the street for a prohibited encroachment in the street at 308 Lakeshore Drive by Steve and Julie Saniter.
Okay. Do we have a motion of adoption for this?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 21-1.
Thank you, Diane. Do we have a second? I'll second it. Okay, so we do have the information on this, and we have the.
You're breaking up a little bit.
How about now? Any better?
Not much.
Okay, so this is an application for a privilege in the street, and who is going to discuss this one for us?
I will. We require, the city owns the right of way. So any property that's designated as right of way between the property lines, where the street is located, is considered city property. So generally from back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk on any street is city right of way. You are not allowed to put any structure in that right of way without city permission. And what this does is it allows people to apply for the right to put something in the right of way under the conditions that they realize that it's at their cost and that the city can order it removed at their cost. And that we don't have any financial liability for any damage done to it during any construction. Similar, we filled out occupancy permits on State Highway 89 when we did that one, and there were several hundred of those. We have quite a few of these now. This one puts a conduit in the right of way from the house across the street to their boathouse. So it runs across Lakeshore Drive. It allows them, technically the conduit isn't a big deal, but the electric line would be. So what this is doing is granting them the right to have a conduit with an electric line in it from our standpoint, it's better than having to set up a new pole and metering site, because then they have 2 meters and they have 2 bills for each meter, and we have to maintain each one of those meters, and you have to set a pole, and you don't need any extra poles along the right of way. So we feel that this is a better option, and that granting the privilege in the street would be a good idea.
So with this, will they actually have to cut the street, or is this going to be drilled underneath it?
They did a sanitary sewer and water main connection just recently, and as part of that, they put in the conduit.
Okay.
So they just have to dig down, find the conduit, and then pull it through the conduit, so they won't have to cut the street again. But they did cut the street as part of the sewer and water project.
Okay. Anybody else?
So this would be done as soon as possible?
The conduit's already been installed. The wire will be pulled probably sometime next summer. They've got an empty lot, and they're building a new house this summer. If you remember the fake conditional use permit that we issued, they're the ones that have to finalize that conditional use permit. And this power source will probably tie to whatever their conditional use permit ends up being.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, this is basically really just cleaning up after the fact, it seems like, except they might have to pull the cables through there and stuff like that.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear me at all?
No.
There might be.
Now we
one.
can.
Now you can hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh, it's this extra little switch on this thing that's messing up. Okay, yeah, so this, if there's no other questions, we're ready to call the roll call vote then, please.
Mr. Fritsch, Diane,
Aye.
Mr. Foster,
All
motion passed 3-0.
right, item G, resolution 21-2. Can I get the title read, please?
Resolution 21-2, authorizing the granting of a privilege in the street for prohibited encroachment in the street at 123 North Main Street by Rubbish Restyled.
Okay, yeah, and this one's just a little different because this is for a hanging sign. So with this, Steve, didn't we normally take signs and things like that through the plan commission?
This is actually an awning. Doesn't
Oh,
have a
that's
sign.
right.
It doesn't have a sign on it, and so an awning just goes through the building inspector. But it has to meet the conditions set for the privilege in the street, because an awning has to be a certain distance above the public right of way. So we went through and it met all the conditions that were required. So it's consistent with several other awnings that we've approved in the area. It's not anything unusual.
I make a motion to approve resolution 21-2.
Thank you, Diane.
Second.
And thank you, Doug. Okay, so what questions do you folks have?
What is Rubbish Restyled?
I did not ask that question. I imagine it's some kind of antique refinishing site or some old furniture that gets refinished and remarketed. But
Yeah.
I cannot tell you exactly, because I just want to know where the awning is going and how high above the right of way it is and what colors it is and those types of things. I don't.
Yeah, you're right.
It's interesting though. It's a cute name.
It is, yeah. And I've seen companies that call themselves that, and you know, they've done everything from making bag straps out of old car seat belts to, I mean, you name it. So it could be an antique store. It could be something totally different.
Yeah.
But anyway, does anybody have any questions on this privilege in the street?
It's met all criteria, right?
Right.
Yep.
Okay, let's call the vote, please.
Diane,
Aye.
Mr. Foster,
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch,
Aye.
motion passed 3-0.
Thank you, Misty. Item H, Resolution 21-3. When you get yourself together, Misty, please read that title.
Resolution 21-3, approving and implementing the City of Lake Mills mailboxes damaged during snow plowing policy.
Okay, I will accept motions of adoption for Resolution 21-3.
So moved.
Thank you, Doug.
Second.
Thank you, Diane, for the second. And this we had discussed a while ago, and it's just coming to us now, and looks like we're gonna raise the claim limit from $30 to $50 to, I guess, deal with some inflation and things like that. So are there any questions that anybody has about this?
I want to make some comments. We just
Yep.
did 2 privileges in the right of way. So you know that we try and control items that end up in our right of way so that we don't have to spend a lot of time having to work around them or fix them or those types of things and end up with all the responsibilities of that. The post office has shifted their costs. So when they went from urban walkers with a mailbox on the house to urban drivers with a mailbox at the curb line, they shifted that cost of paying the extra cost for walkers to the reduced cost of drivers to us, because we now have to pay someone $50 to replace a mailbox. That was cost shifting by them. We would not pay anybody else for damage of something in the right of way. And first question, one of the questions I got already tonight is how does the city get away with not have any liability on mailbox damage in the right of way? Well, we're required to plow the streets, and that mailbox is in our street, not on your property. So you have no right to have that mailbox there. The post office doesn't have the right to tell you to put that mailbox there. They can only tell you to put it on your property. And I think that in this case, it's a situation of we got a bad deal, and what we've done is just kind of shifted to what the county has done for as long as they've plowed roads is take the average cost of a minor mailbox and replacement and send it out. So that's where this comes from.
What do you, go ahead.
Well, my question is, what gives the post office the right to put a mailbox in our right of way?
You want to answer that, Dan, or do you want me to answer that one?
Well, I don't really have an answer for you.
I don't either. I think that they're the U.S. Post Office and they do what they want until someone challenges them, and even then they just kind of roll over you.
Well, I'm thinking maybe it's time we challenge them on that, especially if there's a cost.
Now, Diane, in your neighborhood, your mailbox is on your house, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so they have to walk and put it up there. And
Grant Street has a post on the road for one house that I know of.
Well, in my subdivision and in Mike's, everybody has a mailbox out at the curb.
Okay.
And
Maybe that's
that's,
something we should look into and just, since Dan, you don't have enough to do, ha, ha, ha. But, I'm just wondering if any other cities have challenged it.
I'm not aware of any. I can look into that though. That's not something I've researched.
Yeah, it just doesn't have to be in the front burner, okay? But, you know, if you run across something, I'd be interested to hear about it.
I would too, Dan.
My question is, what's the impact on the budget? Or what do you foresee as the impact?
Recent years, it's been 3 to 5 mailboxes that people have reported. Depending on what kind of snow year it is, you know, the deeper the snow, the more the snow, the heavier the snow, the more speed it's required to push it off the street, the more mailboxes that get damaged. So it ranges from 3 to 20 a year. So you're looking at, you know, 20 times 50. It's not a huge. It's just I get a little frustrated with, you know, everybody else shifting their costs onto us.
Yeah, well, and it makes sense.
Oh,
But it would be nice to know if we could tell them, no, we can't have mailboxes there anymore and make them walk up to our driveway. But I think somebody would get mightily upset
Well,
about that.
and it isn't, if they don't want to do anything about that, then they need to take the people who are upset about the mailbox, then we need to send that to the post office and say, here, you put it on our thing, now you take care of it.
Yeah. That's a hard thing to justify.
Good luck.
Exactly. That'd be hard to justify giving the homeowner the runaround, even though we know that we're not responsible for it. It's just sometimes it's the right thing to do to make it a less painful situation for our folks that live in the community with us. So that's my take on it, but anyway,
I don't have a problem with resolution 21-3.
okay. All right, so with that being said then, I guess, unless you have any other questions for anybody, we will call the vote.
Mr. Foster,
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
motion passed 3-0.
Thanks, Misty. Number 10, recommendations for future agendas. We may have some stuff coming up with the Parks Board, hopefully soon. I don't know how quickly it'll come up, but it's some stuff that Steve and I and probably Dan will be talking about in the near future here, and it may bring in some of the other boards and committees along with it to go through and maybe look at charters for these groups. So that's all about all I want to say about it right now.
When are you anticipating it being on an agenda?
Steve, do you think we could do something by the 2nd in February? You think that's too fast?
I could do the first meeting in February. I think the next meeting would be a little bit tight. I've got those other two. I've got the staffing study memo and the fee memo.
I don't want to do the next meeting. We have enough on there.
Yeah, no, I get you.
But I would just like to have some lead time to know that it's going to be on the agenda. I don't want to have it just pop up in my face.
Yeah, and I would say it's probably going to be either the 1st or the 2nd meeting in February. And if Steve thinks he can do it on the 1st, we'll try to look at the 1st, at least for what I'm talking about with the Parks Board. And it'll be something that our new council person will be hopefully knee deep in here as soon as we get her on board. Steve, you already talked about it. You mentioned it, the staffing study, some stuff that we talked about right after last meeting is the the need to do a staffing study because of potential retirements coming up in the next couple of years. So I'll let you hit on that.
Yeah, I think it's time to reevaluate the organizational structure, and based on the fact that we have enough turnover occurring, that we might want to realign positions and skills and those types of things to eliminate gaps and overlays and create some better structures for communication and getting things done. But I really think that for the 22 budget, we should be looking at a staffing study. The fees one is basically asking you to do some research and make some determinations on policies for why we charge certain fees.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with that policy, it should be, well, what level should that fee be? So from that standpoint, those are two items that I would like to move forward at this point in time.
Okay. And then the other one that I had, it's not going to be so much on the agenda, but it's going to be my time getting that poll set up. So everybody knows that we picked the top two branding logos. And my plan is to get those presented in a poll out to the community. So it's going to be a matter of getting the poll finished on the software, adding a second question to it, and then working with our different stakeholders to get that information out to the community. And the way that this poll will work is once folks are aware of it, whether we get it out there through Facebook or word of mouth, whatever the thing is, these folks will create a login to the system with their address, and they'll be able to respond to it as a citizen of the city of Lake Mills. It'll be our first test of the polling software, and hopefully it'll work. We'll get a bunch of people signed up, and it will be a good way for us to get questions out to the rest of the community through some sort of a polling response system that validates they are a citizen of the city of Lake Mills. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify what we just said in the last 5 minutes here. What I heard is that, well, we already have the next meeting completely covered with the low-income housing thing. So that takes care of that. And then the first meeting in February, Steve is looking at bringing and talking about the staffing study, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that takes us to the second meeting in February. Now, on the second meeting of February, you mentioned two things, Mike. You mentioned the Parks Board, and then you mentioned the kind of what overview of all of the boards and things. Those are two different things, right?
Yeah, but most likely the very first one that we do in February will only be about concerning the Parks Board. And then
Okay.
the rest of them will come sometime later.
So we're
down
looking
the
at
line.
maybe the second meeting in February is what you were looking at for that? For the
second
Parks
or
March?
March, yeah.
Okay, one of those two. Okay, and then, all right, and then the fee thing, where does that fit?
First meeting in February with the staffing study.
Oh, those two go together? Okay.
Theoretically, they don't, but I've got them both ready to go at that time.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, all right. And then, and the branding logo you're working on right now, right, Mike?
Yep, I'm working on that right now, and hopefully I'll have some news before the next meeting,
Yeah.
or on the next meeting.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Whether
I won't worry about that. You'll bring that up when you're ready.
Yep.
Right? Okay, okay, I have a general idea of what we're doing. Thank you.
Good. I don't. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I just want to make a comment. I'd like to say that the work that Dave Grumman's been doing the last couple months, bringing us the new computers and the old computers and being able to have them both for the meeting has been fantastic. And he's really worked hard behind the scenes where people don't see him. And just want to say a special thank you for all his effort. And I love it.
It's definitely an upgrade from the.
Yeah, it's a big improvement over the old way where we kept trying to flip flop back and forth, and it was driving me nuts. So this is much better. Thank you, and Dave, thank you for your time, your effort, and your dedication to the city of Lake Mills.
Okay. If that is all, we stand adjourned, and I will see you guys next meeting.
Okay.